The old man looked at the credits, and then at Alex, his expression unreadable. "You sure about this? Once you're gone, you're on your own. There's no turning back." Alex didn't hesitate. "I've been on my own my entire life." The man nodded slowly and motioned toward a nearby alley. "Follow me." As they moved through the winding alleys, Alex felt the weight of the situation settle over him. He wasn't just running anymore. He was on the edge of something bigger. His escape from Byler had caught the attention of the entire galaxy. And now he was about to step into a world where everyone wanted him dead. But that didn't scare him. It only fueled his fire. The old man led him to a small, battered transport ship. It wasn't much to look at, but it would do. The man gave Alex a final, cryptic look before gesturing for him to board. Alex stepped inside the ship, taking one last glance at the planet below. It was the last time he would see Byler. The last time he would ever let anyone think they could control them. The engines hummed to life, and the ship shot into the void, heading toward the unknown. But as Alex stared out the viewport, he couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest part was yet to come. The galaxy was vast, and he had just kicked the hornet's nest. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. The galaxy hunts. Alex's heart pounded as he slipped deeper into the shadows, his breath shallow and quick. The small settlement in front of him, with its ramshackle homes and flickering lights, was the perfect place to hide for now. But it was only temporary. He couldn't stay here for long. The galaxy was already searching for him. And Byler Prison's security breach had set off alarms across the galaxy. The pursuit was inevitable. Bounty hunters, military ships, even the corporate forces that ran the prison, they would all be after him. Alex knew the rules. The moment someone escaped a place like Byler, every bounty hunter in the sector would be salivating for the prize. And that prize was him. But Alex had done the impossible before. Escaping Byler was just the beginning. He had no illusions about his situation, though. If he wanted to survive, he needed to get ahead of them, outsmart them before they had a chance to corner him. As he crouched behind a rusty barrel, peering out at the settlement, he watched a few locals move quietly along the paths between the buildings. They were unaware of the chaos that had just erupted in their quiet corner of the galaxy. They had no idea that a human, an escapee from Byler, was hiding among them. Alex wasn't going to make any moves until he had to. Every part of him screamed for caution. The bounty hunters would be looking for someone who didn't belong, someone like him. For now, he needed supplies, food, water, and most importantly, intel. He stood up, moving with calculated care through the settlement, sticking to the shadows. His instincts were sharp. He moved like a predator hunting its prey. Every sound, every movement in his peripheral vision was analyzed for danger. He didn't trust anyone here. Not yet. But if he played his cards right, he could get what he needed without drawing attention. As he entered a small market-like area, he spotted a man hunched over a counter, arranging crates of food and basic supplies. The man was older, grizzled, with a face that had seen too many hard days. He didn't seem like much, but Alex could tell he was connected. Everyone in a settlement like this had their connections. The trick was knowing who to trust. Alex approached casually, his eyes scanning the area. His movements were slow, unthreatening, as he leaned against a nearby post, eyeing the old man. He waited for a moment, letting the tension build, then stepped forward. "You got anything useful?" Alex asked, his voice low but firm. The old man didn't look up at first, but then he glanced over his shoulder, sizing Alex up. He'd seen men like Alex before, fugitives, drifters. He wasn't fooled. "Who's asking?" The old man replied, his tone cautious. "Someone who needs to get off this rock." Alex answered simply, his eyes narrowing. He didn't want to make a scene, but he needed information. And there was no time to waste. The old man's expression softened to just a fraction. "You got credits?" he asked, his voice low. Alex didn't answer immediately. He didn't need to. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a few shiny chips, tossing them onto the counter. The old man eyed them, and then nodded, his lips curling into a knowing grin. "I got what you need," the man said, glancing around to make sure no one else was paying attention. "But it's gonna cost you. Information's valuable here. Real valuable." "Information," Alex repeated, eyes flicking toward the far corner of the settlement, where small ships were parked. He had to keep his focus. "Yeah," the man said. "There's a bounty on your head, all over the galaxy. You think you're the first to escape, Balor. Think again, kid. The galaxy's seen your face, and they'll come looking. Every bounty hunter worth his salt's already on his way. And the cops, they'll follow." Alex cursed under his breath. He'd known it was coming, but hearing it from someone who clearly knew more than he did was a blow. It didn't matter. He'd dealt with bounty hunters before. He'd dealt with the galaxy's most dangerous people and come out on top. "How long do I have?" Alex asked, trying to keep the edge out of his voice. The old man eyed him again, a small smirk forming. "Not long," he replied. "Maybe a few hours before the first ships start arriving. But there's a way out. I can get you to a transport. If you're willing to pay the price, I can give you a ship off this rock." Alex's mind raced. The escape had been smooth so far, but now the real game began. The entire galaxy would be after him, and he would have no allies, no place to hide. He needed to keep moving, stay ahead of them. If he wanted to survive, he would need to trust this man. "All right," Alex said, throwing the rest of his credits onto the counter. "Get me off this planet." The prison was in chaos. The backup systems were still being restored, and the emergency lockdown protocols were triggered, leaving the guards disoriented and vulnerable. Alex had learned the art of patience during his time in Bylor, and now that patience was going to pay off. He reached the outer gates with a sense of calm determination. His mind worked quickly, analyzing the security system, searching for an opening. It was there. A small crack in the system, a single flaw in the design. Alex didn't need much, just enough of an opening to disable the gates long enough to make his escape. He knelt down, pulling a small tool from his belt, a high-tech bypass device he had crafted during his time in the prison. With practiced hands, he inserted it into the access panel of the gate's security system. A few seconds later, the screen lit up with a soft green glow. The gate was offline. Baylor's final line of defense had just been breached. Alex didn't waste a second. He pushed the gate open just enough to slip through, his heart racing as he stepped into the cold night air. The sky was dark, the stars above barely visible through the thick atmosphere surrounding the prison. But there was freedom on the other side. The galaxy might have thought it had won, but Alex had just taken the first step toward reclaiming his future. But as he began to move forward, the ground shook beneath him. His heart skipped a beat. It wasn't an earthquake. It was the sound of approaching ships. The prison was located in a remote part of the galaxy, far from the reach of regular law enforcement. But that didn't mean the galaxy had forgotten about Balor. Alex knew that within minutes, every ship in the sector would be on high alert, searching for him. The military, bounty hunters, and other factions would converge. He had to move quickly. He couldn't afford to be caught now. Alex glanced around. There were no ships in the immediate vicinity, but he knew that wouldn't last long. He needed cover. A plan. Something. Anything to put some distance between him and the prison before the galaxy came crashing down on him. In the distance, he saw a small settlement, a collection of huts and structures barely visible in the dim light. It wasn't much, but it would do. He could find shelter there and maybe even some supplies. Without hesitation, he began to run toward the settlement, his legs burning with each stride. The sound of engines grew louder behind him, and Alex's instincts kicked in. Every part of him told him to move faster. The shadows were his allies now, and he used them to his advantage. keeping low and darting between buildings as he approached the settlement. The settlement was small, a cluster of homes built by colonists who had made this barren world their home. They didn't ask questions. They didn't care who came or went, and that made it the perfect place for Alex to hide. As he slipped into the darkened alleys between the structures, Alex took a moment to catch his breath. He was out, but the hard part was only just beginning. He knew he had to leave the planet soon. The galaxy wouldn't stop searching for him. But for now, he was free. He had broken through the chains that bound him, and he had outsmarted the prison that no one had ever escaped from. But as he stood in the shadows of the settlement, he realized one thing. The hardest part of his journey was yet to come. The galaxy was vast, and it was filled with enemies. But Alex was a human, and he had proven that humans could do what no one else in the galaxy could. He had survived Byler, and now he would survive the galaxy. The chase was far from over. But Alex Carter was ready. "You think I'm just a prisoner?" Alex hissed. "You thought you could cage me, but you've never understood what you're dealing with. You're just like every other fool who thought they could break me." Vex grimaced, struggling to break free from Alex's grip. He was strong, but Alex was faster, and he had learned the art of control in the most brutal of ways. "You'll regret this," Vex spat, his voice low and filled with venom. "Do you know who I am? I am Torin Vex. I built Byler. I am the reason you're still alive." Alex's grip tightened for a moment, his eyes never leaving the warden's face. There was no fear in Vex's words, only desperation, and that was all Alex needed. He stepped back, releasing the warden, who stumbled slightly, clearly rattled. "I don't care who you are," Alex said calmly. "You were just a man hiding behind a wall of power, but that wall's come down." The alarms blared again, but this time, they weren't the usual shrill warnings. They were a death knell. The prison was collapsing in on itself. The chaos was spreading faster now. The guards weren't following orders. They were retreating, scattering in fear. Vex was losing control of his own facility. Alex knew he didn't have much time. The warden was growing increasingly frantic, scrambling for another way to regain control. "You don't understand," Vex muttered, pacing back and forth. "You're not just breaking out. You're breaking something far worse. You're making an enemy of the entire galaxy." "I've been making enemies since the moment I was born," Alex replied, his tone flat. "The galaxy's afraid of me, and it's not because I'm a prisoner. It's because they know I can do what they can't. I can survive." Torin Vex's eyes widened. The warden's facade of authority was crumbling. He knew it. Alex knew it. The fight was over before it had even begun. With a sudden, shocking move, Alex turned and began to walk out of the control room, leaving Vex standing in stunned silence. The warden was too broken, too frightened to stop him now. As Alex walked down the hallway, the doors to Byler Prison finally slid open in front of him, unlocked, unguarded. For the first time since he had arrived, he felt the outside world within his reach. The warden's voice crackled over the intercom one last time, but this time, there was no confidence, only desperation. You won't get away with this. The galaxy will come for you, human. They'll." Alex didn't let him finish. He was already gone. The escape. The cold, sterile air of Byler Prison no longer felt suffocating to Alex Carter. The corridors that had once seemed like a maze of danger and uncertainty now felt like a path leading to freedom. He had taken down the central control room, defeated Torin Vex, and had done what no one thought possible. He had broken out of the most secure prison in the galaxy. But the fight wasn't over. The galaxy had no idea what it had just unleashed. There would be no easy escape for Alex. The alarms had already sounded, and the remaining guards were scrambling to react. Byler might be in disarray, but the galaxy's law enforcement and military forces would soon be on their way. They would come, and they would come hard. Alex's boots pounded the cold metal floor as he sprinted down the empty hallways. The lights flickered overhead, the hum of the prison's emergency generators the only sound now, as the systems struggled to maintain the structure of the facility. He could hear the voices of the remaining guards, but they were far behind him. They were no longer the threat. They were just another obstacle in his way. Ahead, the massive outer gates of the prison beckoned, the final hurdle. But it was a deadly one. Alex had studied the layout of the prison in detail since his arrival, memorizing the security checkpoints, the guards' patrol routes, and the prison's most vulnerable areas. But the outer gates, the last line of defense, were still a major hurdle. They were the most reinforced part of boiler, designed to keep prisoners from escaping, designed to keep people like Alex from ever getting out. The gate was massive, designed to withstand the might of the most advanced weapons the galaxy could throw at it. But Alex wasn't relying on brute force to break through this time. He wasn't going to shoot his way out. Instead, he had something much more valuable: time. "I don't need to hide," Alex muttered under his breath, his voice filled with resolve. "I'll make you regret underestimating me." With the backup systems still offline, the prison's defenses were down. The guards were in chaos, scrambling to restore order. And in that chaos, Alex found his opening. He sprinted toward the control center, taking advantage of every second of confusion. The power was still out in most parts of the prison, leaving the security systems scrambled and uncoordinated. The Baylor staff was trying to restore order, but the human in their midst was too dangerous to control. As he neared the central control center, Alex could see the massive doors just ahead. They were reinforced, nearly impenetrable, but nothing was impenetrable to Alex. With one fluid motion, he pulled a device from his belt, a small, high-powered explosive, planted it on the door, and triggered the countdown. The explosion was deafening, shaking the very foundation of the prison. The reinforced doors buckled and split apart, and Alex charged inside, feeling a rush of triumph. He had broken through every defense they had put up, but there was still one obstacle left: Torin Vex. Alex knew that if he was going to escape Balor, he would need to confront the Warden, and he would do it on his own terms. The game was about to reach its final stage, and the stakes had never been higher. The Warden's last stand. The explosion had shattered the silence that had fallen over Balor Prison, signaling the beginning of the end for the guards, the Warden, and the fortress they had built so meticulously. Dust filled the air where the reinforced doors once stood, and Alex Carter was standing in the doorway of the central control room. His heart raced, but his mind was calm, calculating. He had known this moment would come. The guards would scramble. The Warden would send his best. But Alex was ready. The security systems were in disarray. The backup generators hadn't kicked in fully yet. The prison was blind and deaf. For a few minutes, Baylor was just a shell, and Alex was the storm inside it. His boots echoed through the corridors as he walked in, past the wreckage of the door he had blown open. The control center was wide, filled with consoles, blinking lights, and a sea of tech that once seemed invincible, but not anymore. Ahead of him, standing behind a large terminal, was Torin Vex. The Warden's face was a mixture of anger and disbelief, his hands gripping the controls like a man holding onto his last vestige of control. 457 Alpha, Vex said, his voice cold and harsh. "Did you really think you could do this? Do you know what you've just done? You've destroyed years of my work. You've compromised everything. You will not leave here alive." Alex didn't flinch. His eyes never left Vex as he slowly moved closer. Every step felt like an eternity, but Alex knew it was only a matter of time before he took control. "You're wrong," Alex said, his voice steady. "I'm not here to destroy. I'm here to survive. And I've done that every step of the way." Vex scoffed, turning toward one of the nearby guards who had appeared, looking panicked. "Shut down the lower sectors. Activate all the lockdowns. Now." The guard hesitated for a moment, his eyes darting to Alex nervously, but he did as he was told. his hands flying over the controls. Nothing happened. Alex watched the guard struggle, and a faint smile tugged at his lips. He had already disabled the lockdown protocols. There was no escape for anyone anymore. Vex's eyes widened when he realized the system was still down. "You can't escape, human," Vex sneered. "The walls of Baller have never failed me, and they won't fail me now. You're trapped in here with us." Alex's voice was calm but filled with a dangerous certainty. "The only thing I'm trapped in is your delusion. This prison, it's yours, but it's my playground now." Vex's hand reached for a small console by his side, one that Alex recognized as a direct link to the prison's emergency backup weapon systems. If Vex activated it, the prison would be armed to the teeth with non-lethal deterrents designed to incapacitate and recapture prisoners. Alex was prepared. He lunged forward with surprising speed, reaching the console just as Vex's finger hovered over the button. With a swift, practiced motion, Alex grabbed the warden's wrist and twisted it, forcing him to drop his hand away from the controls. Breaking point. The walls of Baylor Prison felt colder now, as if they could sense the shift in the power dynamics. Alex Carter, the human who had been imprisoned, was no longer just a number in their system. He was a force. The guards, who once held authority over the prisoners, now walked the halls with their heads slightly lower, their eyes darting nervously to the shadows, as if expecting him to appear at any moment. Alex had known that it would take time for the prison systems to recover from his first breach, but now he was certain that they were running scared. Toran Vex, the warden, had been in charge for years, but he had never encountered anyone like Alex, and Alex was playing a game that he had been honing for years, a game of patience, cunning, and relentless will. It had been days since Alex had first begun his quiet rebellion. The guards were on high alert, but there was no way they could know just how deeply Alex had infiltrated the prison systems. He wasn't just a prisoner anymore. He had become a shadow, slipping through their fingers with ease. As the days dragged on, Alex made his move, more daring with each passing hour. He knew that the only way to truly break out of Baylor was to dismantle the prison's defenses from the inside, piece by piece. So far, his efforts had been methodical. He'd hacked into security systems, disabled cameras, and even managed to confuse the prison's tracking systems, causing the guards to chase shadows as he moved unseen. But now, Alex needed something more. He needed to make the warden realize just how badly he had underestimated him. The night was his ally again. As the moonlight streamed through the small window of his cell, Alex looked out across the vast prison yard. The guards walked their usual patrols, but Alex could see the tension in their movements. Something was about to break, and it wasn't going to be him. He waited for the right moment, watching the guards as they passed his cell. Then, when he knew no one was looking, Alex slipped into the shadows once more, his footsteps light and swift. His target was the main generator room, the heart of the prison's power system. If he could cut off the main power supply, it would throw everything into chaos. Lights, doors, cameras, even the force fields that kept prisoners in check. For just a moment, the prison would be vulnerable. And that was all he needed. Alex moved through the corridors with practiced ease, slipping past guards who were too distracted by their own nerves to notice him. The fear among the staff had spread like wildfire. It wasn't just Alex they were afraid of anymore. It was the unknown. They didn't understand how one human could cause so much chaos in a prison built to contain the most dangerous beings in the universe. When he reached the generator room, Alex paused. He could hear the humming of the massive machines inside, the steady thrum of energy that powered everything in Baylor. But that sound wouldn't last for long. He was about to change everything. Alex took a deep breath and slid inside the room, moving swiftly to the main control panel. He knew exactly what he was looking for. The intricate system of wires, circuits, and security controls wasn't unfamiliar to him. He had trained for moments like this, and now he was going to put that training to use. As he worked quickly, His hands moved over the control panel, expertly disabling the security measures. He bypassed the locks on the generator's core and started to manipulate the power flow. Slowly, the lights in the room flickered, and a low warning tone began to echo through the facility. Alex felt the adrenaline surge through him as he continued to work. The moment the power cut, the alarms went off, the lights went out, and a deep, unnatural silence settled over the prison. Baylor was plunged into darkness, its carefully organized chaos now thrown into disarray. Alex didn't waste a second. He sprinted down the hallways, heading for the control center. The prison was in turmoil now, and he knew it would take the guards a few precious minutes to get the backup generators running. That was all the time he needed. But as he approached the control center, something shifted. A voice crackled over the comm system. 457 Alpha. I know what you're doing. You can't hide forever. The voice was cold, commanding. Torin Vex, you may have disrupted our systems, but you will not escape. You will not leave Baylor. I will make sure of that. Alex stopped dead in his tracks. The voice was unmistakable. Vex knew exactly where he was. He had no intention of letting Alex slip through his fingers. The warden was far more aware of him than Alex had thought. Still, Alex wasn't afraid. The warden's words were a challenge, and Alex had never been one to back down from a challenge. It only made him more determined. He had come this far, and now he would finish what he started. Alex could hear the fear in their voices, and it made a grim smile spread across his face. He was just getting started. Then, a new voice entered the conversation. It was lower, commanding, and full of authority. Torin Vex. Enough. The warden's voice cut through the chatter like a blade. This isn't about what he can do. This is about stopping him before he does more damage. We are not going to let one human jeopardize everything we've built here. There was a heavy pause. Alex could imagine the warden standing tall, his face set in grim determination, his cold eyes scanning the room full of his subordinates. The tension was palpable. He's just a human, sir, one of the technicians said, a hint of nervousness creeping into his voice. I mean, we've locked down every exit, increased security, and he's still in here. How much damage can he really do? A cold, dangerous laugh echoed through the comms. You still don't understand, do you? Vex replied. This human isn't like the others. He's already proven that he can breach our systems. If we don't neutralize him now, he'll break through everything we've built, and we will lose control. That's not something I'm willing to let happen. Alex's heart beat faster. The warden wasn't just worried about a prisoner escaping. No, Torin Vex was terrified of him. It was the first time Alex had heard anyone talk about him in this way, and it fueled his determination even more. They feared him because they had no idea who he really was or what he was capable of. Still, Alex knew that this was just the beginning. Vex was a dangerous man, and the fear he now felt was only the tip of the iceberg. The warden had made a mistake by underestimating him, and Alex intended to make sure that mistake would cost him everything. Alex moved with quiet precision toward the prison's heart, the warden's office. He knew that, at this point, it was the only place that would hold answers to the questions that had been burning in his mind since the moment he arrived. Why had he been brought here? Why were they so determined to contain him? And why were they so afraid? The halls seemed to grow colder as he moved deeper into the prison. The security measures in place were tighter now, and the guards were on high alert, but Alex was undeterred. He knew what he was doing, and he knew how to stay hidden. When he finally reached the warden's office, he took a deep breath and paused, listening. The door was slightly ajar, and he could hear the muffled voices inside. Vex was speaking again, this time with a deep sense of urgency. Activate all contingencies. I want eyes on 457 Alpha at all times. This human is too dangerous to be left alone. And make no mistake, if he escapes, the galaxy will never forgive us. Alex could hear the fear in Vex's voice, and it made his heart race. He was closer than ever to understanding the truth. The galaxy's most feared prison wasn't just worried about containing him. They were worried about what he might do if he was left unchecked. Suddenly, the door to the office swung open, and Alex had to quickly duck into a dark alcove, pressing himself flat against the wall to avoid being seen. The warden and two heavily armed guards walked past, their voices growing fainter as they moved down the corridor. Alex waited for a few moments before emerging from the shadows. He wasn't going to be able to get into the warden's office just yet, but the information he had overheard was enough to push him forward. Balor Prison had underestimated him, and now they were scrambling to stop him. They didn't know what they had unleashed, but they would soon find out. The clock was ticking. The warden's fear was palpable, and Alex knew it was only a matter of time before they came for him. But no matter what they tried, there was one thing that was certain. He was not going down without a fight. The game had only just begun, and Alex Carter had every intention of winning. Using a small hidden device, a tool he had managed to keep hidden on his person, Alex began to hack into the prison's security system. It was nothing too complicated for him. His years of experience had taught him how to manipulate systems from the inside. As the device worked its magic, Alex felt a rush of adrenaline. His pulse quickened. For the first time since arriving, he felt in control. He could almost taste freedom. His fingers moved swiftly, bypassing layers of digital security until the prison's cameras were temporarily disabled. He didn't have much time. This was only a short window of opportunity. If the system reset took too long, the guards would notice the malfunction and fix it. But Alex wasn't about to be caught. He moved quickly, slipping out of his cell and into the long, dark hallways of the prison. The eerie silence made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. He had been in some dangerous places before, but there was something about Balor that felt different. The air was thick with a sense of tension, almost like the walls themselves were watching him. Alex's footsteps echoed as he moved stealthily down the corridor, avoiding the guards as he remembered the layout of the prison from his initial intake. He had memorized everything: the location of cameras, guard posts, and even the corridors that led to the central control room. His target was simple: the control room. If he could get in there, he could take control of the prison's entire system, and that would change everything. As he approached the control room, he spotted two guards standing near the door. They were talking to each other, oblivious to his presence. Alex paused, hiding in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment. He had trained for situations like this. Silence was his weapon. The guards turned their backs for just a second, and in that instant, Alex moved. He dashed forward, his body low to the ground. With quick, precise movements, he knocked out the first guard before the second could react. The second guard reached for his communicator, but Alex was faster. He knocked him out with a swift punch, rendering him unconscious. Breathing heavily, Alex approached the control room door. He had to move fast. He pulled out his device and began hacking into the control panel. But just as the door began to open, an alarm blared, echoing through the entire facility. The lights flickered, and the prison's security systems were back online. Alex cursed under his breath. They had detected the breach. But it didn't matter. The plan was already set in motion. The prison had made a huge mistake. They thought they could control him, but they were wrong. Balor had never faced a prisoner like Alex Carter before. He wasn't here by accident, and he wasn't going to be contained. With the control room now in his hands, Alex's heart raced. The real game was about to begin. The warden's fear. The night air felt colder than usual, and Alex could sense something shifting in the prison. The alarms that had blared moments earlier had stopped, but the tension in the air remained. The system had been temporarily disabled, and he had learned more than he ever expected. But now, as he moved deeper into the heart of Balor, a new kind of awareness seemed to pulse through the prison. It was as if the walls were closing in on him, and something or someone, was watching, waiting. Alex didn't need to see the guards or hear the frantic whispers in the hallways to know that the warden was starting to take an interest in him. The man's name was Torren Vex, and from what Alex had overheard, Vex wasn't a man to be underestimated. He was the kind of leader who was both feared and respected, known across the galaxy for his brutal methods and unyielding control over his prisoners. He had built Bylor Prison from the ground up, using the galaxy's most cutting-edge technology and his own ruthless tactics to create a fortress that could contain even the most dangerous beings in the universe. But now, Alex knew, things were about to change. As Alex made his way through the shadowy corridors, avoiding the occasional guard, he overheard something that made him freeze in his tracks. The conversation was coming from the prison's main control center, a room that he had almost managed to infiltrate just hours earlier. It was still buzzing with activity as technicians and guards scrambled to fix the breaches Alex had caused. "I can't believe it," one of the guards said, his voice full of disbelief. "How did he do it?" "That human. He broke through our systems like they were paper." "He's dangerous," another guard replied, his voice tense. "The warden, he's furious. You saw the footage, right? That man's eyes. There's something off about him. Like he's playing some kind of game with us." The next morning, Alex was taken to the prison's main hall for an interrogation. The warden had been informed of his unique status and wanted to know more about this human. The questions were predictable, about his past, his capture, his intentions, but Alex remained silent, giving them nothing. The silence was more powerful than any words he could speak. "What makes you think you can survive here, human?" the warden asked, his voice low and threatening. Alex met his gaze with a smirk. "Because I always do." The warden's eyes narrowed. "Don't get too comfortable. You're in my prison now." Alex leaned forward slightly, his voice calm but firm. "That's the thing you don't understand. This isn't your prison. Not yet." As he was escorted back to his cell, Alex knew one thing for sure. Bylor Prison had made a grave mistake underestimating him. The galaxy's deadliest prison thought it could contain him, but it had no idea who it was really dealing with. And Alex Carter was about to show them just how wrong they were. Unseen forces at play. The days in Bylor Prison dragged on. Each one felt like a repetition of the last, with Alex stuck in his solitary cell, under constant surveillance. But while the guards thought he was just biding his time, Alex was carefully studying every movement, every sound, every small detail. He had spent years in various high-security places, learning how to survive and adapt. This time was no different. He was patient, waiting for the right moment. Outside his cell, the prison continued its routine, unchanging, but Alex knew something wasn't right. There was an unease in the air, a tension that even the guards couldn't ignore. Every now and then, he would overhear snippets of conversation that made him wonder if there was more to his imprisonment than just a simple criminal charge. Late one evening, Alex overheard a conversation between two guards near his cell. They were talking in hushed tones, unaware that Alex was listening. "Did you hear about 457 Alpha?" one of the guards asked, his voice filled with suspicion. "They're treating him differently. He's just a human. He shouldn't be able to do what he's doing." The other guard nodded. "I've been noticing it too. The security system glitches whenever he's near a terminal. It's like he's messing with the technology on purpose. It's unsettling." Alex's eyes widened slightly. So it wasn't just his imagination. The prison's high-tech security system, designed to detect and prevent any form of escape or sabotage, had been malfunctioning in his presence. Alex wasn't sure how, but it was clear that something, perhaps his very presence, was causing these failures. That could mean only one thing. They were watching him more closely than ever. The first guard continued. "Warden's not happy. He's not sure what's going on, but he's afraid. I heard him talking about the human anomaly last night. That's what they're calling him now." Alex leaned back against the cold stone wall of his cell, a small grin forming on his lips. Anomaly. They were trying to figure him out, but they wouldn't. Not yet. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The next day, things seemed quieter in the prison. The usual hustle and bustle had slowed down, as though the entire place was waiting for something. Even the guards seemed on edge. They whispered more, their conversations often interrupted by quick glances in his direction. But Alex remained still, calm, as if nothing had changed. What had changed, however, was his growing suspicion that his imprisonment wasn't by accident. The more he learned, the more he believed that he wasn't here because of a mistake or an act of rebellion gone wrong. There were forces at play, forces that had planned his capture and had a reason for bringing him to Bylor. In the dead of night, when the prison fell into its usual rhythm, Alex decided to make his first move. He knew that the guards would be focused on routine check-ins, relying heavily on the prison's surveillance system to catch any unusual activity. But Alex had already found a flaw in that system. Every time a new prisoner was brought into the facility, the sensors would reset for a brief moment as they were reconfigured for the new arrival. That reset was his opening. The unlikely prisoner. The Bylor prison loomed ahead, its massive walls stretching high into the sky, surrounded by an atmosphere of cold emptiness. Located on a barren moon, far from any inhabited planet, it was said to be the most secure prison in the galaxy. No one had ever escaped from here, and it had a reputation for breaking even the strongest of minds. But today, a prisoner arrived who was different from the rest. He wasn't a dangerous alien warlord or a ruthless criminal. No, this man was a human, a species often seen as weak by the galaxy's standards. They didn't know who he was or why he had been brought here. All they knew was that he had been arrested for a crime that no one seemed to understand, one that left his captors confused and wary. The guards who escorted him in were unsure how to treat him. Most of them had heard rumors of this human's arrival, but none of them had ever seen a prisoner like him before. The man, Alex Carter, stood tall, his eyes unblinking, his posture straight despite the harsh journey. His face was unreadable, hiding any sign of fear or emotion. The other prisoners whispered as he passed, wondering what could be so special about this human that he had been brought to Bylor, a place where only the galaxy's deadliest criminals were held. It didn't make sense. "He's just a human," one of the guards muttered to another as they walked beside Alex. "What's the big deal?" The other guard shrugged, equally puzzled. "I don't know, but if he made it through the galaxy's security forces, maybe he's not so ordinary after all." Alex ignored their whispers, heaping his eyes forward. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, but his face remained calm and composed. He had been through worse, much worse, and no prison, no matter how deadly, was going to stop him. As they passed through the massive metal doors into the heart of the prison, Alex couldn't help but feel a strange sense of familiarity. He had been in similar places before. No, not places like Bylor. This prison was a different beast entirely. But the feeling was the same. A sense of confinement, of being controlled, of knowing that the only way out was to break the system. And that was something Alex was very good at. Inside, the prison was like nothing he had ever seen. The walls were made of reinforced alloy, lined with energy barriers and sensors to detect any attempt to escape. The cells were small, each one equipped with a single bed and a monitor that constantly watched the prisoner. Everything in this prison screamed control. But Alex had never been a man who liked to be controlled. They brought him to a solitary cell in the highest security wing of the prison. It was a small, dark room with no windows, just a bed, a toilet, and the ever-present monitor in the corner, watching his every move. But Alex didn't flinch. He sat down on the bed, his back straight, his eyes steady. He had been in worse places, in worse situations. He had survived it all. A voice crackled from the speaker above him. "You are now in Bylor prison, human. You will follow the rules. You will not resist. You will not escape." Alex stared at the speaker, his gaze cold. I don't need your rules. And as for escape, let's just say you've made a mistake bringing me here. The voice fell silent, as if taken aback by his confidence. But Alex knew he had to keep his guard up. This place wasn't like the prisons back home. The warden and the guards here had the kind of power that made them seem invincible. But Alex had something they didn't, his will to survive, no matter the odds. And that was more than enough to make him a dangerous man. The hours dragged on as Alex sat in his cell, thinking, planning, waiting. He had been trained for situations like this, trapped in an unknown place with nothing but his wits and his skills. The first thing he needed to do was gather information. And to do that, he would need to stay out of the guards' radar. If they thought he was just another prisoner, they might underestimate him. That would be his advantage. Later that night, he heard footsteps echoing in the corridor. The guards were making their rounds, checking him on each prisoner. But when the footsteps stopped outside his cell, Alex didn't react. He sat motionless, listening to the sounds of the guards whispering to each other. They weren't expecting him to make a move. After all, why would a human prisoner try to escape from a place like this? The guard outside spoke into his communicator. Subject 457 Alpha is secure. He's not going anywhere. Alex smiled to himself. The guards were right about one thing. He wasn't going anywhere. At least not in the way they expected. He wasn't here to escape the prison, not yet. What he needed was something bigger, something they couldn't anticipate.